Thank you so much. Our last session was about the fundamentals of human resource accounting, and this simply entails the basics of human resource accounting. In other words, we were trying to break down the human resource accounting into components that we could easily make meaning. And remember, we said it is the elephant in the room. Normally gives a problem to most organizations. And when the problem is not broken down into simpler units, which can be manageable, then you realize that it cannot be, we cannot provide solution to it. So that is why in our topic 1, rather not just a topic, but an introductory to the units, we looked at the fundamentals. And just to be brief, for those who are stepping into the class for the first time, in 10 minutes, or at most 10 minutes, I'll do this very quickly. We said that business organizations, they thrive in challenging environments. And this is very true. If you take a look and take a picture of the environment, the Kenyan environment, you will realize that this is indeed very true. Both the external environment as well as the internal environment poses a lot of challenge to the businesses. Talk of the open borders, talk of the advancement in technology, talk of the conflicts that exist between the family and work interests. That is work-life balance. How do we engage ourselves to make sure that this is achieved? We have at least a point where we've got harmony, a point where we have a balance between the two. We've got challenges to do with organizational developments. Organizations are changing to the changing environments, year in, year out, month in, month out. These are challenges that businesses go through. Talk of legal ramifications, legal challenges. We've got problems that only pertains to the jurisdiction within which the business operates. If you want to say, you can talk of Kenya, for example, it has got laws, it has got policies that guide businesses. All these are challenges that businesses are grappling with. Now, the only way out of this is to prepare ourselves, is to have an efficient human resource practitioner who is able to handle all this pressure. And that is what human resource accounting is trying to break down. It's trying to make us understand and to generate the strategies that we can really use to position this organization to make it competitive, to make it acquire the greater part of the market share within this environment in which it operates. Remember, several or different organizations could be operating in different environments or different sectors, if we may say. We've got those that operate in the hospitality sector, education sector, and so on and so forth. And each one has got challenges of its own. Now, just to mention, we need really to focus on the intellectual capital, because the only redeemer, the only thing that will redeem business organizations out of this mess that we are talking about is having or focusing on an intellectual capital. Just a minute, I'm sorting out something. Well, thank you so much for your patience. Now, we want to improve the intellectual capital, and that is the human resource practitioner. We want to equip the human resource practitioner with the right skills, with the right strategies that can really be employed to knock down these challenges that businesses go through. So what tools will we need? What tools will we need to enable us do this? We, in our previous discussion, we mentioned that we will need human resource metrics. We will need analytics, and we will need human resource accounting. So you see human resource accounting is coming into the picture because it is part of the tools that will be used to ensure that business organizations, they thrive or they tackle down the challenges. We went ahead and defined what human resource accounting is. And we simply noted that human resource accounting is simply the measurement of the expenditure and the value that organizations do have or make as a result of having the human resources. Now, as a result of acquiring these human resources, the human capital, the intellectual capital, are there expenditures? Are there values that are expected out of this expenditure? If you are capable of quantifying these expenditures in terms of figures, if you are also capable of quantifying these values in terms of the figures, then what you'll be doing is you will be trying to make simple, to give meaning to human resource accounting. So that basically it's what human resource accounting, that is what it entails. So another thing that we talked about are the approaches. If we want to understand, just a minute, thank you so much, Pauline. If any case we want to understand human resource accounting, being the elephant in the room, there are approaches that we have to use. There are approaches that we have to use. And we did mention two approaches, the cost-based approach and the value-based approach. The cost-based approach had to do with the expenditures that we incur as a result of undertaking human resource activities. When we undertake this training program in the organization, when we undertake this seminar or this congress, are there costs that we have to incur? When we undertake this recruitment exercise, what costs must we incur? When we undertake this learning and development program, what costs do we incur? When we bring in an employee on board as a result of recruitment or as a result of promotion, what costs do we incur? So for us to be able to understand this, we focused on what is called the cost-based approach. And cost-based approach outlined or broke down these costs into three classes. The first category being the acquisition costs. And the acquisition costs are simply the cost of bringing in an employee into the organization. There is where you will mention things to do with recruitment. You will mention things to do with the placement, cost related to placement, cost related to onboarding of employees, and so on and so forth. Then you have the employee within the organization. Sometimes they may not have the right skills. They may not have or be endowed with or they may not match the skills that the position requires. What do? You have to ensure that this employee has the skills that match the position. And normally what we do here is to undertake training. That is what learning and development does, to enhance the productivity of the employee by equipping this employee with the right skills through training and development. Of course, it does not come for free. A company or organization must incur expenditure as a result of this, called the learning and development costs. So that takes us to the second class of costs, and that is the learning and development cost. Now we have the employee well endowed with skills, with the right skills that match the job. We need to keep this employee happy because that is actually our job. We need to keep these employees motivated. We need to ensure that there is high employee engagement. What do? We have to reward. We have to reward by paying salaries, paying wages, giving out benefits, and so on and so forth. So this again will constitute another class of costs called maintenance costs. So the cost-based approach simply looks at how or what we intend to do. We need to measure these costs and look at them into those categories. We need to quantify them. So that is what cost-based approach really wants to achieve. to focus on the expenditures that the business organizations, that companies, entities have to incur as a result of undertaking these business or other human resource activities or programs or initiatives, if you may. The second approach that we focused on was the value-based approach, that there cannot be an expenditure without value. There is a benefit that is normally expected out of these expenditures. When we invest heavily in a program, when we invest heavily on an employee, we expect to generate some revenue. We expect to get some returns as a result of such investment. Now, the approach that tends to focus on the benefits that an organization will be able to achieve as a result of this investment, that is what would be called the value-based approach. So value-based approach simply looks at the values that the human resources, the values that this intellectual capital, the human resource, will afford the organization. That is to say, as human resources, as human resource practitioners, what is it that we afford the organizations, the companies that we work for? This is what the value-based approach will be tempting to look at. So those are the two approaches that we focused on and that will help us to understand human resource accounting. So what do we need? What do you really need to understand here? You really need to understand that human resource accounting is like any other accounting discipline, which will tend to focus on the process of identifying the human resource activity in an organization. That is your work. You have to begin by identifying the human resource activity. Is it recruitment that has just taken place? Is it some training that has just taken place? Or could it be an orientation program that has just taken place? So as a human resource practitioner, this is your point, your starting point. You have to begin by identifying this human resource initiative or human resource program. Then we go ahead and journalize it. Journalizing has to do with recording it. We have to record it down as human resource practitioner. Then you will go ahead and summarize it. Summarizing has to do with the fact that we want to present it in a manner or in a format in which it will make sense to us. After we've done that, we have to interpret it. And the essence of interpretation is to generate information. We want to generate information. This information is very, very vital when it comes to positioning the organizations into a position in which it will compete favorably within the business environment, in which it will gain some competitive advantage within the business environment. So if you end up with the wrong information, your organization is bound to fail. Your organization is bound not to realize some of the goals, the business goals. So this information has to be correct. That is why as human resource professionals or practitioners, we are also doubling as researchers. We are in persistent and ever research work. We have to research very well. Before we undertake any human resource activity, we have to research. We must do a thorough cost-benefit analysis. We have to put down what we anticipate in terms of the benefits and what we intend to incur as a result of the cost. Then weigh out if it happens that this human resource program will benefit the organization, then out of the several options that we have, then we have to choose it. In other words, we have got lots and lots of options within the business in terms of the human resource programs, but not all this will be beneficial to the organization. We must only pick on that which will benefit the organization. That is why research will be an endless process, will be an endless process that the HR practitioner must adopt. So these are some of the things that we have to put in place to ensure that we make the HR a better person to handle some of the problems that we have just talked about in the business world. Now, today's class, that is topic 1, will be focusing on the need for a result-based approach. Our topic 1 today, that is the first topic. Remember, what we had been doing before had to do with just a brief breaking down or bringing the fundamentals of human resource accounting for us to have the basic. What is this HR accounting that we want to study? So we had to start from that point. Today we want to look at topic 1, that is the need for a result-based approach. So the human resource practitioner must change tact. You must change tact on how you want to approach this elephant in the room. Because if you fail to use the tact that is best recommended, then you are not going to be of any value to your organization. In other words, you are going to be useless. But we have a point that we really want to prove in the organizations. We are battling very hard to prove a point by demonstrating to the entire organization that we are really contributors to the organization's goals. That is something that most of the organizations still do not believe that HR can really contribute. In other words, we are not highly regarded. That is the fact. We are not highly regarded at our workstations. We are not highly regarded in our roles as human resource professionals. So for us to be able to prove and to demonstrate our contribution to the entire organization, we must prove a point. And proving a point here requires that we change a tact. And the tact that will be used throughout by the HR practitioners and an extension during our discussion will be that which is focused on results. Focused on results and results alone. And that is the result-based approach. Result-based approach is simply a management strategy that focuses on results. In other words, everything that we do within the business must be about results. If it is this recruitment, then we need to ask ourselves, by undertaking this recruitment, what is it that the organization stands to gain? Or will this recruitment just be another added cost to the organization? Actually, these are normally what happens. When we undertake recruitment, it is cost that we heap. And this has led to the HR department being labeled. We have been labeled at one point as a cost center, as a bureaucratic department, a department that involves a lot of processes. We actually had been labeled as transactional. That is to say, most of our activities have to do with the transactions. We have been labeled as a people who engage in activities that are confined within the office. That is, there is nothing else that we can do outside the office. That is why the finance department normally look down upon us. The sales department normally look down upon us, and so other many departments. So we have got something that we need to demonstrate to the organization, and that is adopting a result-based approach. You need to ask yourself, are you relevant? Are you any relevant at your workplace? Remember, with the advancement in technology, your work is at stake here. With advancement in technology, your work is bound to become extinct. How? Okay, if you may ask. We have got the establishment of the human resource information system, which can play a number of activities that I know you can do. If we have got these systems in place, just a minute, Abishakur, you need to remain muted, please. You need to remain muted. You need to remain muted because you are interfering with our class. Just remain muted the way you stepped into the class. If there is any need to unmute, we will let you know. We will let you know about that. Thank you so much. So your role is at stake. Just a minute, Edwin. Mute. You shouldn't unmute. If you get into class, just follow the orders. Everybody is muted and you too must remain muted. Thank you so much. So our jobs are soon disappearing. Our jobs are soon disappearing because technology is here to take over that which you could do. If it's the recruitment exercise that you are bragging about, you could do, then let me tell you that as we speak, there is this technology that can perform this very well without error. If it were about employees' wellness, then there is advanced technology that can monitor the employees' health, and then make prescriptions. So these are things that we should not brag about. We should be asking ourselves, are we any relevant? It goes without saying that, of course, we are not relevant. We are not getting relevant. We have to think, we have to rethink, what is it that we can do to ensure that we are relevant as human resources? And this is what takes us to the result-based approach. Apart from staying in the office, preparing payrolls, waiting for these recruitments, what other thing can we do? So this is what calls upon ourselves to get out of the office, and have an holistic understanding of the business environment. In other words, we need to understand the business operations. We need to understand the product. We need to understand the policies of the business. We need to have a good knowledge of the business organization. So by doing this, we are simply changing our roles from where to where. We are changing our roles from transactional. We are changing our roles from what we were known with, that is hiring and firing. We were changing our roles from being paper pushers. We are changing our roles from recruiters to something else. And that is something else that is aligned to this new strategy, the result-based approach. And these new roles that we have to embrace are: HR must now be recognized as a strategic business partner. We must now become strategic business partners. That is number one. We must now become bottom line decision makers. We must now become bottom line decision makers. Let me just share with you some slides on what I mean. Just a minute. Let me just share with you something on what I have. Hope you can see the document or the slide I'm sharing. So we are simply trying to explain, we are simply trying to trace the changes that are taking place in the human resource field. And of course, there are a lot of changes that are taking place in the human resource field. In the last decade, for example, HR has been moving away from the traditional approach to the modern approach. We have been moving, we are in motion. We are moving away from the traditional approach to the modern approach. This modern approach is what we call the result-based approach. And the result-based approach constitutes two things. That is the cost-based approach and the value-based approach. So these are what we want to try to illustrate. I'm using a simple chart to help us understand this. Now, traditionally, or traditional HR, what we are known for, we were transactional, like I said before. We were paper pushers, and I believe some of us still today are paper pushers in the office. They sit there, they report to work at 8, step into the office, on the office chair, they swing around, they wait for recruitments, they wait for training. Actually, training is also a traditional HR function. If you thought that was a modern HR function, then you are wrong. Trainings, so all sort of those are personnel skills Those are personnel skills. So you should not brag about them. You shouldn't brag about them. So these are traditional HR functions. HR being a doer. We were doing, those are particularly some of the things that we engaged with. We were a support function. We were a support function, and our duty was to deliver some pre-packaged HR services. Pre-packaged in the sense that they were imposed. They were imposed. They are policies that had already been put in place. These are packages that we had found in the organization, and we had to execute them the way they are. Traditional HR. It's not enough to demonstrate your contribution. It's not enough to make yourself relevant at your workplace. So you have to shift to the modern HR, which is actually the result-based approach. So what about the result-based approach? So result-based approach is what now brings into play the new roles of the human resource practitioner. Remember, we are modeling, we are reshaping the human resource practitioner, whom we regard as the intellectual capital. No any organization can thrive without an intellectual capital. Very important. So we have to remodel this capital. We have to reshape it, to prepare it for the new changes that are being that are happening at workplace. So result-based approach is the way to go. What does it entail? It entails HR being a bottom line business decision maker. HR being a bottom line business decision maker. You are going to be a strategic business partner. You are now a partner. You are not an employee. That is what we are talking about. You are not an employee anymore, but you are a partner. So as a strategic business partner, you must not be a stranger in that organization, but a partner. We all know what partners do in business. If you happen to be in a partnership kind of business, we know what you will do. You'll be sharing into the profits. You'll be making decisions jointly. You'll be running the business jointly. Control will be done jointly. So this is not the time when you will be sitting on the fence and waiting for things to be decided for you. This is the time that you are also a business partner, meaning you have to enjoy into the profits. And this has to do with you bringing something on board. As partners, we have got different skills and specializations that we can bring on board. You could be operating a business as a partnership. Then you have got 3 partners, one bringing the law, one a lawyer, for example, one a doctor, and maybe a procurement officer. All of them come together with a common goal, with a common understanding. And you can see the different skill sets that they put together in this basket. And this will help the organization to even achieve more. The same thing must now apply with the church. We must not be strangers in Jerusalem, but we must also now step forward and be business partners. We must have an understanding of this business. We must have knowledge of this product that the business is engaging in. We must have knowledge of what is happening in the line department, in the functional department. It's not the time to wait for the line managers to do all this by themselves, but it is the time for us to step out and help the line managers to achieve the organizational goals by helping them to implement customized policies, not the prepackaged. Remember, we are moving away from the prepackaged and moving to the customized, because not all organizations are similar. What worked for organization company A, for example, what works for Safaricom may not work for Equity Bank, because these are totally different organizations. Though there are instances in which HR policies may be standard in the global arena, but not all the time this will be the case because of a lot of dynamism that we are experiencing within the business world. So they have to be customized. And the only way the line managers will be able to achieve this is when we step up. So over the past decades, that is what HR had been going through. We had been moving away. Actually, we have moved away from the traditional approach to the modern approach. So if there is a people who needs to embrace, then it is us, because of the unfavorable business environment and factors that we are going through with our organizations. So what does it mean when we say HR now being a bottom line decision maker? What does it mean when we say you are a strategic business partner? So very quickly, let's look at that. Now, as a strategic business partner, you as HR, you must now understand the product. So if you thought that this was the work of the sales manager, or this was the work of the sales representative, then you have to think again, because it is now incumbent upon you to understand, to have a deeper knowledge of what the products are. What product is it? What service is it that your organization is producing, right? What is your organization capable of doing? And what is your organization not capable of doing? Who are your customers? What kind of customers are they? What do they like? What are the trends in the market? You have to study the demand trends. You are a strategic business partner. You must be able to understand how you will position the business competitively in the marketplace. Remember, you are not operating alone in the business arena. You have got several and similar organizations that offer the same service. If it is the telecommunications sector, it is not Safaricom as the lone player. We've got Airtel, we've got Orange, and so on and so forth. All of them are grappling to gain the market share. If there is any one of these firms that will not adopt the right strategies, then he will be out of the market. So we have to ensure that our organization is able to compete in this market. And the only way we'll be able to achieve that is by being strategic business partners, right? And that means we have to understand the product. So you have to step down, move to the production chamber. This is now the time for you to move to the production chamber. Say, hello, how are you doing, guys? Right? Monitor, rather not monitor, but observe what is going on. This is now the time you need to partner with the line manager. You need to work hand in hand. You need to ask questions about the product, the challenges, some of the surveys that have been presented in the field. What were the outcomes? What needs to be improved? And so on and so forth. This is what called for you to be a strategic business partner, not sitting in the office waiting for the recruitment. Because an administrator can do this. Actually, there are organizations that have separated these lines of operations. They have administration department that are now delegated to play the roles that were formerly held by HR, that is recruitment, placing of employees on jobs, learning and development. So it is no longer your job. It is no longer your job. So we have to ensure that we become and we embrace this new role as strategic business partners. Another thing, HR is a bottom line business decision maker. That is the other role that we said. We have moved HR as a bottom line business decision maker. What do we do here? We have to demonstrate our validity to the business. Are we valid? That is what I asked. Are you relevant? Are we valid or are you invalid? In other words, whatever strategy that you come up with, does it have an impact on the overall organization's bottom line? When I talk about bottom line, what I mean is simply that which can be quantified, in terms of returns. We want to look at profits, right? Can your actions impact on the profits? Can we see an improvement, an upward trend in the revenues being generated? This is what we are talking about. Are you valid to the business? Can you demonstrate your ability to accomplish business objectives? Can you demonstrate your ability to accomplish business objectives? Actually, this is what will make you relevant as to whether you can be maintained by the top management or you can never be maintained by top management. So it is important that we are able to understand this. We are able to understand the language of business. Do we have a strong business acumen? Do we have a strong business acumen? We cannot have a strong business acumen if we confine ourselves within the borders of that office we call the HR office and wait for employees. We wait to summon employees on lateness. We wait to summon employees on their failure to meet targets when we do not know the reasons behind them coming late. We do not know the reasons behind them not meeting the targets. We are moving away from that traditional approach to the new approach. The new approach demands that we have to strike a balance between the personal life of the employee and the work life. Because this, in a way, could also be one way in which employees could not be meeting targets if we don't strike a balance between the two. We have to look at the mental health of the employee. And this is so sad because going by the news we normally get from the social media, from whichever news, there have been a lot of cases where employees are taking their own lives. We heard about what happened in the media sector, where a DJ took away his life. We've heard about several cases where police officers, for example, taking their own lives. They commit a murder, they kill their spouses, they kill their family. Then thereafter, they take away their own lives. Do we take this for granted? Do we want to heap blames on these employees? No, there can never be good health without mental health. There can never be. So we have to talk about mental health, mental wellness, right? So these are part of the things that will make us to accomplish the business objectives. We must perform and we must be accountable. HR now must be accountable, right? And when you talk about accountability, it has to do with you evaluating the programs. It has to do with you measuring the programs. Measuring the programs have to do with attaching some monetary value to them, attaching some figures to the programs. It is not just about recruitment, but what value does the recruitment bring to the organization? That means we must be able to attach some value to it. If it is a scale of 1 to 10, then we should be able to come up with a scale and say that in a scale of 1 to 10, I can give it 10, or I can give it 5. I can give it 2. Then what are the reasons behind me giving it 1? What is it that I need to improve, right? So these are what we must now focus on. We must now focus on our new role as big business. I mean, bottom line, business decision maker. We are making decisions. In other words, if you had been keen, the human resource practitioners have encroached the boardroom. What are they doing in the boardroom? They are playing the role of observers. Though they have not been allowed to participate in voting because they are not the directors. They do not have the voting rights, but they have encroached the boardroom to an extent that they play the role of observers. They can give their opinions on certain issues that the business is facing. So bottom line, business decision maker, our new role that we must embrace as strategic, or rather as a result-based approach, as the people who really want to embrace the result-based approach. So in connection with what we've just been discussing, there are a lot of trends. There are a lot of human resource trends that have been happening within the business as environments. So these trends have impacted positively to some extent and also negatively to some extent. And world over, all the top executives, the managers are agreeing that human resources are vital or have got vital role that they can play to improve the organization's bottom line. That is something that all of us are agreeing upon. And according to some research that have been conducted, all of us are in agreement, of course, that there needs to be change. There need to be change. So these improvements in the human resource functions are what we want to look at under the important trends which are related to the HR contribution. As you try to demonstrate your contribution, these are some of the changes that you have to embrace as human resource professional. So one of these changes that I'll briefly talk about is the increased importance of the HR function. There has been increased importance of the HR function. In other words, people have started to embrace HR, not like before, where HR was regarded as a cost center, as a center where expenses are incurred, but no revenue in return. It was regarded as a bureaucratic center. It was regarded as a center that have nothing to contribute to the overall goal or performance of the organization. But as we speak, all the top managers and the executives and the CEOs and so on are all agreeing that HR has got a role to play. And so there has been an increase in the importance of HR function. Part of the things that we need to ask ourselves are, what has been the attitude of the top executives towards the HR department? Part of these, I think, I've answered, because I said, traditionally, we were taught as people who were just, cost centers. People who had very little to contribute, very little to put on the table. People who could not contribute anything. So this attitude has changed. This attitude has changed because the top executives are really embracing the new role of the human resource practitioners, that is being strategic business partners, as well as the bottom line business decision makers. Now, how has this attitude changed? The attitude that we have identified, of course, it has changed. And it has changed for good, for the good of business organization. Because when we look at our new role as human resource professionals, you will realize that there are a number of changes that are taking place at workplace. For example, we have managed to secure a place at the boardroom. We have managed to secure a place at the boardroom. And also going by the awards that employees globally are receiving, the human resources have also started to receive awards. We are receiving awards. Every year, there are international, or rather global awards that normally go to the HR professionals for the good job that they do at their stations. Apart from that, no one now works as HR, as an ordinary HR for his or her entire life. We have a lot of promotions at workplace. Gone are the days where all the CEO or the top positions were held by only people from other academic backgrounds, such as lawyers, such as engineers, and so on and so forth. Now we can proudly say that HR has advanced because we have CEOs who have HR background. We have got CEOs who have got HR background. This simply tells us that HR has increased in its importance. So these are the changes that have just taken place in HR. Just a minute. Another area in which we can say HR has increased is importance, is based on the competencies, In other words, the executive are now embracing the fact that we as HR have a knowledge of the business. We as HR can deliver the HR practices. We as HR practitioners can manage the changes that are happening within the business environment and so on and so on. This is just enough for us to demonstrate the contribution that we as HR can make in the business arena because of the significant number of improvements that are happening to our role as HR. There are quite a number of HR-related trends. We have got increased accountability. There is need for HR to be accountable. There is need for HR to measure. There is need for HR to evaluate. Why do we have to evaluate? We have to evaluate because we have got quite a number of alternatives. We have got not one program, not two programs, but more than two programs that we have to make choices over because the resources that we have are very scarce. And we have to utilize these resources efficiently and economically. That means we have to pick on this alternative that will give us the greatest returns. Evaluation will be very key. Measurement will be very key because it is through measurement that you are going to come up with the ranks. Is it important to undertake recruitment? Or is it important to undertake training? There could be alternatives, other alternatives. So we should rank all these alternatives and then choose this alternative which will be giving us the best returns. So there is need for us to be accountable. There is need for us to do an evaluation. There is a lot of organizational changes, and it is the HR department that will help the organizations to execute these changes. So this is another trend or improvement. There is also need for improved productivity, and quite a number of them. I will share with you part of these slides at the end of the discussion, so that you get to know some of the trends that HR are going through. We've talked about work-life balance and the welfare programs. These are improvements. Diversity at workplace. These are the times when the workplace has been characterized by a lot of diversity, from skills, from culture, from cultural backgrounds, educational backgrounds, and so on and so forth. How do we deal with all these diversities at workplace? It needs an expert. It needs a strategic business partner and a bottom line business decision maker to give meaning of this. Technology, something that you can never avoid. There are introductions of robots. Robots are taking over some of their roles in the business world. How do we manage the challenges that come with technology? Some people are losing their jobs. Some roles are being merged. Some are becoming redundant and useless. How do we have to deal with all this? So these are improvements that have challenges, they have benefits. Because you can never have a program that will not impact positively, but rather also have challenges that it will have to come with as a result of its adoption. So there is also growing concern in the legal fraternity. We have to comply. In the business environment that we are operating in, we have to comply. So legal factors have to come into play. There is globalization. Remember, our borders have been open. Gone are the days when we used to prohibit other countries or states from trading with us. These are the days where we have signed very many treaties. We have signed very many policies. We have signed and entered into very many agreements with other like-minded partners. I mentioned the other time about the East African Economic Bloc, where all the East African states, they trade freely. So this has created a lot of competition because the same product that our company could be producing within can also be produced and provided by another, which comes from the outside. So how do we deal with globalizations? But we have to really understand that these have got benefits and challenges. How do we deal with the challenges? All the challenges that come as a result of the improvements we have just talked about, that is the trends, the HR-related trends we've talked about. Talk about outsourcing of human resources, talk about HR development, talk about wellness and welfare, talk about the increased or the improvement in productivity, and so on and so forth. They pose a lot of challenges to the HR world. And that is why we have to prepare the HR. We have to repackage the HR so that he or she is well endowed with the skills, with the strategies that he can execute and adopt to ensure that these challenges do not dealt a blow to the business. How do we deal with the challenges? Now, the human resource functions must now be integrated in planning. In other words, there is no planning within the business that will be done without the involvement of human resource practitioners. If you are a CEO who had been practicing that, then there is the time that you must incorporate the human resources when it comes to laying strategies, when it comes to planning. The HR functions must be integrated. They must be integrated into the strategic planning and into the operational environment. That framework must entail the input of the human resources. So that is a way we will be able to deal with the challenges that come as a result of the improvement, because there is no doubt we have to move. Actually, there are two constants. Change is something that is always constant, and we can never avoid it. So we have to embrace this, and we have to ensure that we integrate ourselves. We have to be integrated into planning. HR must build relationships. You are a strategic business partner. You must be in good relationship with the line managers. You must be in good relationship with the finance department, as well as all other departments within the business organization. That is another way in which we will deal with the challenges that are posed with the improvements, because moving, we have to move. We have to move. So human resources must build relationships with other team managers in the organization. And in particular, we are stressing, you must build relationship with the line managers. Why must we? Because remember, it is the line managers who are always in direct contact with the employees. If it's a matter of knowing how employees feel, a matter of knowing the potential of each and every employee, then they are the people who are in a better position to explain it to us. So if we detach ourselves from them, if we keep it to ourselves, then we'll not be able to get all this information. So we must ensure we have a working relationship with the line managers in order for us to be able to understand the product, in order for us to be able to get the knowledge and what customers feel, what areas customers need to be improved. Then we must make sure that we build a relationship with them. The HR staff must improve techniques. You must come up with new techniques and processes. That way you will be effective. That way you will remain effective. So it's also important for us that we draw a line between the traditional approach and the modern approach. Sometimes we may be called upon to be able to differentiate these two. That is, as we move away from the traditional approach, what is it that sets it apart from the modern approach, which is the result-based approach? That, again, is something that we have to focus on under the paradigm shift. So under the paradigm shift, we'll have got two approaches. We simply want to compare them. That is the traditional approach and the result-based approach. And in the traditional approach, we are told that programs were just initiated by request, by suggestions. And this ended up creating a lot of programs because the managers would suggest programs. They would suggest new programs. Then the end result would be several programs that would pile, some of whom would not have any impact in the organization. But in this new approach, in this new modern approach, there has to be need analysis. We have to carry out a need analysis. That is, we are required to initiate programs only after a legitimate need has been established. Do we need it? Do we need to recruit? Or we just want to recruit for the sake, right? So the result-based approach will be challenging you. Will be challenging you to explain, to give an outline of some of the reasons as to why you need to recruit, some of the reasons as to why you need to undertake this training program. You need to ask ourselves. It's not just a matter of coming up with trainings. In a month, you end up having 5 trainings, which absolutely have got no impact, have got no improvement, no contribution to the organization's bottom line. So this new approach will have to, we will have to conduct a need analysis and to determine whether this initiative, this program that we really need to undertake, whether it will be needed, whether it will be needed. Another approach, another aspect that we have to consider is a traditional approach created programs that could not be eliminated. The existing programs could not be eliminated. In other words, some of them appear to be permanent. Whether they were contributing or not contributing, they were concrete, and we could never do without them. But in this new approach, there is always a review and adjustments of these programs. When a program is obsolete, we do not throw it away, but we need to review it. We need to review it and make some adjustments to it. So you cannot just discard a program or an initiative because it is not benefiting, but you really need to figure out what is it you're not doing right to this program and improve on those areas. That is the result-based approach for us. Now, the traditional approach and its activities, never involved HR professionals. In other words, the top management had the prerogative to undertake almost all the activities. The HR and all other parties and other people who are regarded as partners were never involved. So you can never succeed without involvement. In the future chapters, we'll look at how we develop result-based approach. And we will all agree that for a result-based approach to be realized, there has to be involvement of everybody. Everybody must come on board and have their input for the results to be realized. So traditional approach never involved anybody. Decisions were made by the CEOs, their word were final. And so other players or other departments were never allowed to give their input. So those are the paradigm shifts that we also have to expect, even as we try to move from the traditional approach to the result-based approach. I want us to stop there because time has really moved. I want us to stop there because time has really gone. But it is important to note that there are benefits. There are benefits of moving away from the traditional approach to the modern approach. These are what we will look at under the payoff of measuring the HR contribution or the payoff of formal approach to evaluation. And when you talk about the formal approach to evaluation, what we really mean is the result-based approach. What are the payoffs of the result-based approach? What are the benefits of the result-based approach? I've summarized that in the slides, and I'll be able to share that with you so that you can get the finer details of what I mean when I talk about the payoff of measuring the HR contribution, plus other areas perhaps that you needed further explanation. But because of time, we didn't explain it and you didn't get it well. So I'll share with you the slide. Now, in our next class, we shall look at topic 2. We shall look at topic 2, and that is measuring human resource contribution. We shall now get to the business of measuring human resource contribution. In other words, what is it that is involved in measuring HR contribution? What is it? What does it mean when we talk about measuring human resource contribution? So let us stop there. Let us stop there and take questions. If we have questions, there is the time we'll take them. If we have comments, there is the time we will have them. Thank you so much. Let's have the comments. Let's have the comments rolling.